Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here back with another video. So, I'm making this video Sunday night, and I'm actually working tomorrow morning, so I'm going to be going to bed pretty soon. And I've actually been doing overtime this weekend. I'm working like 10 days in a row, so been very, very busy, haven't had any time to make videos. And I actually wanted to make a video this week. I actually wanted to talk about this fight between Joyce and Derek Chisora, and kind of speculate on where Joyce would go and what he would do after he easily dispatched of Derek Chisora, which is what I logically assumed would happen in this fight. Well, obviously, as you guys already know, what ended up happening was a pretty big upset. Chisora, who was, I think, a 4-1 underdog, I actually thought it should have been wider than that, if truth be told, was able to beat Joyce in a pretty competitive, pretty scrappy, pretty messy fight. I sat down to watch it just now, and yeah, I gotta be honest, guys. Like, very, very rarely am I surprised nowadays in boxing, but I was shocked, and I mean literally shocked, by what I saw watching this fight. So, before I talk about where both guys go from here and just a few observations, I just want to talk about the fight itself and just try to break it down. So, from the opening seconds of the fight, what became very, very apparent to me is that there was something seriously wrong with Joyce. And the reason I say that is because those of you who have followed Joyce's career will know. Now, he's always been a flawed fighter. He's always been relatively crude. He's always been a guy who neglects defense and who gets hit more than he should. He's never been the fastest or the quickest or the most explosive fighter. But what Joyce has already been, or has always been, is he's always been a relatively unorthodox fighter. And what I mean by that is he has a very awkward stance, a very awkward style. He has a way of finding the target by probing with his lead hand, drawing a lead from his opponent, and landing punches from strange angles. And he has a very, very high punch output, usually in fights. His foot movement is a lot more fluid and a lot more sophisticated than it looks. Like, he's one of these fighters who's a lot better technically than he looks like. At first glance, you look at him, you think he's like a big lump, just a big tough guy swinging away. But when you actually look at Joyce and examine particularly some of his earlier fights, there's a certain fluidity to the way that he fights. He's a guy who gradually breaks you down. And to me, he's quite similar to someone like Beterbiev in terms of how he just breaks you down bit by bit. He'll land clubbing, cuffing shots on the inside, and just bit by bit he'll chip away at you and drain your energy. And he's a guy who had such a great chin and such a great gas tank and had deceptively quick feet for a man of his size, to where he was able to overcome his technical deficiencies, like his lack of defense and his slow hands and whatnot. And, he had a very, very high output of punches. And he was always a guy who, like I said, he was somewhat fluid in the ring and a little bit better than advertised. And I'm not about to pretend he was brilliant or anything like that. He was always beatable, obviously. He was kind of a late start to boxing and, a guy who came from another sport and whatnot. So he was always flawed in many ways. But my point is, he was a guy who you would logically assume would have enough to beat somebody like Derek Chisora, especially the version of Derek Chisora that we've been seeing in recent years, who, let's be honest, is not only past his prime, but is pretty much punch drunk at this stage of his career. You listen to Derek Chisora talk, the guy's very incoherent compared to what he used to be. He doesn't really have great punch resistance anymore. Every time he gets hit clean, he ends up leaning on the ropes and holding himself up. He kind of reminds me of Hazeem Rahman towards the end of his career, where he would get hit with a grazing shot and he would have to hold the ropes to keep himself up because he would just get very easily discombobulated. That's what happens to fighters when they their chin kind of gets cracked and they lose their punch resistance. That's what I've seen with Derek Chisora. He's also shown very poor stamina in recent years. If you look at the fight he had against Gerald Washington, he really struggled to get through that fight. And the fight he had prior to it, where he fought Tyson Fury, he got absolutely beaten from pillar to post. That was a one-sided massacre of a fight, that was. And his fight prior to that, he barely made it the distance against Kubrat Pulev, who put a beating on him for most of the fight. So you had to assume logically going into this fight, with Joe Joyce's punch output, with his fluidity, and with him just being a relatively unorthodox style of fighter, you had to imagine he would have been able to beat Derek Chisora at this stage. But I gotta be honest, guys, I'm literally shocked by what happened in that fight. And what shocked me most was just how, not even how much Joe Joyce appears to have declined in terms of his physical ability, but how Joe Joyce seems to have literally lost the plot. And what I mean by that is, and I mentioned this in the comment section of Precise's video. I think I mentioned it before the fight. I talked about how it was surprising to me how from one fight to the next with Joe Joyce, I'm talking about the Joseph Parker fight, where in my opinion he put on a career best performance. I thought he was going to lose that fight. I was picking Parker to win, but Joyce really surprised me with his performance in that one. For him to go from that fight to the Zhilei Zhang fight, which wasn't long after, and to be so different in terms of how he approached the fight. If you look at the Parker fight, you know, Joyce had some lead hand control, he was getting foot position on Parker, he was cutting off the ring skillfully, breaking him down bit by bit, drawing a lead from Parker, and making him waste energy so that he could have more success in the later rounds, forcing Parker to move excessively, stuff like that. He then fights Zhilei Zhang, and all that goes out the window. He just stands right in front of Zhang, no defense, no guard, no probing, no foot position, nothing. He's literally walking to his right, leaving his right hand nowhere near his chin, like holding it by his waist, and just walking right into Zhang's left hand over and over and over again, to the point where one side of his face is like badly swollen up. To me, that was shocking, to see him go from a relatively sophisticated yet crude pressure fighter in the Parker fight to then go and fight Zhilei Zhang and become literally a punching bag. It's one of the quickest declines, like mental declines in a fighter, and one of the most poor tactical decisions I've ever seen. So we know what happened next. He fought Zhilei Zhang in the rematch, got completely destroyed, got taken out in 3 rounds, and made sort of the opposite mistake. Instead of walking into the straight left, he was walking into the right hook. And it was like you watch those fights and you think to yourself, does this guy not know how to just put his hands up and block a punch? Does he not know how to get into a boxing stance and crouch and try to make himself a smaller target? It's like Joe Joyce had never even been to a boxing gym before or anything. That was what it looked like watching those fights. And it was such a stark contrast to his previous fights that I honestly couldn't believe it. Shocking. But yeah, with that in mind, I still thought he was going to be Derek Chisora because, again, it's Derek Chisora. It's a completely shot version of Derek Chisora. But what shocked me watching the Chisora fight, it was even worse than the Zhang fights in terms of the tactical decisions made by Joyce. Because, again, what lost Joyce the fight, in my opinion, I don't even think it was a physical decline that lost him the fight. What lost him the fight, in my opinion, was tactics. So, in the first round of the fight, now bear in mind, Derek Chisora is the shorter guy. Derek Chisora is himself a very, very crude fighter. And the blueprint has been out on how to beat Derek Chisora for years, okay? All you have to do is stick a jab in his face and move. And Derek Chisora has no idea what to do, because Derek Chisora is a guy who needs you to be at mid-range so that he can hit you, right? He has to fight inside, he has to crowd you, he has to apply pressure, and he has to make it a dogfight, he has to make it a brawl, because if it's not a brawl, Derek Chisora cannot beat you. He can't beat you in a back-foot technical boxing match, alright? You look at any of Chisora's fights at world level, or like borderline world level, he cannot handle long-range boxing, alright? And Joe Joyce, who was able to outbox the likes of Bermain Stavern and Carlos Takam and guys like that from long range. Like I said, he was able to use lead hand control and better foot position to get the better of these guys from long range. He was training with the likes of Ismail Salas and David Hay and guys like that, and learning to be a bit more explosive from the outside. You would have expected Joe Joyce to have the kind of preparation going into this fight to know how to beat Derek Chisora. Just keep him at long range. He was like, what, a 5-inch height advantage, something like that. Just keep him at long range, just pump the jab out, move laterally, and box him. But no, Joe Joyce squares up, literally stands in front of Derek Chisora without getting into a boxing stance, just having both his feet basically parallel. And he was leading with left hooks. And when I say left hook, I mean, I use the term left hook liberally, because he was basically just throwing the hook without turning it over, without actually trying to land with the knuckle part of the glove, without turning his hips, and without putting any power into it whatsoever. Literally just slapping his left hand like a little girl who has never hit a boxing pad before, who has never hit the punch bag, nothing, like doesn't know how to generate any power or any speed or any momentum or any accuracy behind a punch. Literally, Joyce is just standing there with his feet, like I said, with his feet basically parallel, and just just slapping, like waving a little slow, weak, garbage left hand that just wasn't targeted at anything. That's the kind of punch he was leading with. And then Derek Chisora, being a relatively experienced fighter who, if you don't have any fundamentals at all, Chisora will expose you. Okay, if you literally don't know how to throw a punch or put your hands up, Chisora just does what you should do. He just swings the overhand right with full power and is able to easily counter Joe Joyce. He's able to land that right hand pretty much at will the entire fight, because Joe Joyce does the same thing over and over again. Squares up, puts his feet basically parallel, and just throws that little tippy tap, slow, ponderous slap that again has no momentum on it. Guys, I'm shocked. I have never in all my years of watching boxing, I've never seen a fighter decline mentally in terms of just literally forgetting everything they know about boxing as Joe Joyce. And I'm starting to wonder what's going on here. Like, has Joe Joyce, I'm starting to wonder if Joe Joyce has some sort of mental illness. Like, is this guy literally retarded? He must be. Is Joe Joyce, does he have CTE? Is he like severely brain damaged? Does he have like a portion of his brain that makes certain or that's responsible for decision making, or responsible for thinking multiple steps ahead? Does that part of his brain just not work anymore? Because to go from that Joseph Parker performance, which was a fantastic performance against a fighter who was able to convincingly beat Derek Chisora, a much better version of Derek Chisora than we saw last night. I mean, what happened, guys? I mean, I'm rambling in this video because I'm speechless. I don't know how to dissect this. I don't know how to break it down. I don't know even what to tell you what went wrong with Joyce. I mean, yeah, I mean, fair enough. Like Precise was saying, Joyce gained a lot of weight over the years and kind of fell in love with his chin and the whole juggernaut persona. Yeah, that's definitely true. I agree 100%. He overestimated his toughness and durability and kind of forgot about the technical improvements he made earlier in his career. I definitely agree there. But there's a fine line between forgetting your technique and not developing technically beyond a certain point, and literally just forgetting everything. Like going into a fight and having no tactical game plan whatsoever, just squaring up, putting your feet together, and throwing a punch that isn't even really a punch, that isn't really targeted at anything. It's like Joe Joyce wanted to lose the fight, or he wanted to take a beating, or I don't know, man. It's just boxing is so weird sometimes. It really is, and I'm sure people are gonna say, "Well, Joyce was never that good. He was overrated. Chisora would have always beaten him. This, that, and the other." Guys, like I said, just look at the Joseph Parker fight, right? And compare that performance, compare what Joe Joyce was able to do in that fight. Again, look at Joe Joyce's stance in that fight. Look at his foot movement. Look at how he was riding with punches, taking the sting away from them. How he was probing with his lead hand, chipping away at Parker. How he actually had a jab in that fight. He would actually lead with a jab occasionally. And look at how he was able to drain the life out of Joseph Parker by making him move excessively. Are you telling me he couldn't have done the same thing to Derek Chisora, a guy who got bitch slapped by Joseph Parker, got dropped multiple times by him, and beaten up and almost stopped by him several years ago? Are you telling me he couldn't have done that to Chisora if he'd have got his tactics right? I don't know, man. I don't know, but what WTF happened to Joe Joyce? You guys tell me. I'm very, very tired. It's been a long ass day. I'm gonna get my head down soon, and yeah, I hope I get a few days off soon, because yeah, I'm kind of knackered at the moment because I've been working my ass off. I've been training too, and I want to get back to making some videos. I want to make some predictions. It's been a while since I made any prediction videos. I want to make some, and maybe we'll have a live stream next weekend. I don't know, but yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment sections. Let me know what you think happened to Joe Joyce. And yeah, man, what happened? What happened to the guy? It's crazy. It's crazy, man. So yeah, let me know what you guys think anyway. Thanks for watching, and God bless.